Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet NRL Round 14 betting trends preview. I'm really excited to go through the games this weekend. We're on fire at the moment with the sports plays. We've won 15 of our last 16 sports bets across the NRL, AFL, and MLB, and are on a run right now, winning the last 13 straight. Plus, we're coming off a 50-unit month in the horse racing in May. We're at 220 units so far in 2025. So everything's going really well at the moment, looking to keep that run going. In this video, I'm going to preview all the games coming up this weekend in the NRL. We're going to look at the betting trends, who's been winning their previous matchup, who's been covering, what were the odds, and we're going to look at the trends from these teams and their current form. We'll also go through some stats. So this video is going to really help you figure out how you're going to bet on the games this weekend to actually make money. All the statistics, everything I use to analyze games, you get included in the NRL Bet Finders, which you can access through the link in the description. The first game on Thursday night, Newcastle Knights at home against the Manly Seagulls. The line opened here, the Seagulls $1.44 favourites, one of only two road favourites this weekend, minus 6.5 point favourites. Those odds have stayed consistent through the week so far. The total is 44.5, but is looking like it's starting to move down. It's being juiced to the under, which isn't surprising considering Newcastle have only had one game go over the total this season. So they are 11-1 to the under. And then Manly, they have had their last 7 games go under. You can also go back a little bit further. 8 of their last 9 games have gone under the total. The only exception was when the Storm put 48 points on them. The previous meetings between these two sides, Manly have won 3 of the last 5. There's been a draw in there as well back in 2023. The game Newcastle won was in round 13, 2023, where they won 28 points to 18. Right now, Manly sit in 7th position, Newcastle all the way down in 15th. So it's very hard to see Newcastle working their way into the top 8. However, they still only sit 2 games outside where the current top 8 line lies. For this game, I think there's key player for both sides that one of these two players is going to step up and get their team over the line because their Queensland origin selection depends on it. For Newcastle, Kalen Ponga was given the week off last week in the Knights' loss in their game against the Dragons, where they lost 20.6, back to the side struggling to score, and he returns this week. If he has a bad game here, then it's very likely he's out of the Queensland side, particularly with Reece Walsh returning for the Broncos this week, but he's also not a given selection into the Queensland side at fullback. And then for the Seagulls, Daly Cherry Evans, who is the main talk around the Queensland side as whether he's going to be selected for Game 2. He put in a really good performance last week in the Seagulls win over the Broncos. If he has another huge game here, gets his side over the line, then it's probably hard for Billy Slater to drop him from the Queensland side. So I think he'll step up and get Manly over the line here and win them this game. Newcastle just don't really have enough points in them to win. However, Manly are inconsistent. If Manly play just average, they should win this game. Newcastle is still the worst attacking side, ranked 17th, averaging just 13 points a game, but they are the number 2 defense. However, Seagulls are only the number 4 defense, so they're pretty evenly matched in terms of defensive numbers, and Manly are the better attack. So, as I said, if Manly can just play an average sort of game, they don't need to be exceptional, but as long as they don't have a shocker, which they've been in a bit of a habit of having good games then poor games and struggling to string them together, they get the opportunity here to be able to do that. With the total at 44.5, it is interesting because you have conflicting trends here. Both sides, the last couple of months, heavily favoring the unders, but between the two of them, their last 5 meetings have gone over the total points line. Over the past month, so each team's last 4 games, Knights games are only averaging 33.8, and the Seagulls games are only averaging 38.5. They both rank in the bottom 4 in game total points. Based off of that, I'd be leaning towards the unders, particularly in the second half. Knights are averaging over the past month the lowest scoring second halves, and the Seagulls the 3rd lowest scoring second halves with 2 teams combined. So potentially the second half unders is the better play if you want to break it down a little bit further. Next game, we have the Melbourne Storm versus the North Queensland Cowboys. Storm, big favourites here, $1.20, minus 14.5. And the total is 51.5, but looks like it's moving up, currently juiced to the over. Melbourne come into this game after beating the Titans last week. They have this game here against the Cowboys, then they're off for another bye. They currently sit 4th on the ladder with 7 wins from 11 games. They have only strung together back-to-back wins on 2 occasions this season, which is somewhat surprising, but they back in round 1 and round 3, they beat the Eels and Panthers, and then round 5 and round 6, they beat the Seagulls and Warriors. Since then, they've gone loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. They have a really good opportunity to win another game here at home. They've won their last 8 games at home, and for the Melbourne Storm, they're big favourites here, expected to win. However, the Cowboys have won the past 3 against them. All 3 of those games up in North Queensland. They met in round 26 last season. Cowboys won 38-30. Keep in mind, though, the Storm rested a lot of players for that trip up to Townsville. In 2023, they only met once in round 14. The Cowboys won 45-20. And then in 2022, they only met once in round 11, 36 points to 6 in favor of the Cowboys. However, if you go back beyond those last 3 matchups, Storm won 12 straight against the Cowboys. They've also won the past 7 at home versus the Cowboys. So I think with home field advantage, Storm can reverse that trend. In terms of the Cowboys, they come into this off a win against the Tigers at home last week. They played their last 3 games at home, so haven't had to travel for quite some time. And I think they'll be exposed a little bit here defensively, and also in terms of the first half. I think Storm are going to be able to build a lead on them early here and probably run away with it. Storm have only trailed at halftime on 1 occasion this season, which was against the Sharks a couple of weeks ago, where the Cowboys haven't really been the best first half side. They've only led at halftime on 3 occasions so far this season. Storm are the number 1 scoring side in first halves. They're averaging just over 20 points. And the Cowboys concede the 2nd most points this season in first halves at 14.4. In recent history, and just looking at the past 4 games, the Storm are still the number 1 attacking side at 19 points in first halves. And defensively, the Cowboys rank 15th, only followed by the Titans and Tigers. In first half margins, Storm rank 2, Cowboys rank 11th. It's really hard to see the Storm not leading at halftime. If they can go on with it in the second half, they should be able to cover this line. It is a pretty big number. I'd lean towards them covering it. I'd also lean towards this game going over the total at 51.5. 5 of the past 6 between these two sides have gone over. Cowboys, 4 of their past 5 games have gone over the total. Storm, 2 of their past 3 games have gone over. And last week in the game against the Titans was played in the rain, and they still scored 44 points in that matchup. So at home, if there's good conditions, I'd lean towards a high-scoring game here. Both teams should find points, but the Storm to run out pretty dominant winners. Dolphins versus Dragons. Dolphins $1.56 favorites, minus 4.5, and the total open at 47.5 has now moved up to 48.5. The home team has won and covered all 4 meetings between these two sides. Dolphins have won and covered 2 of the past 3, but the Dragons won the most recent matchup in round 17 last season, 26-6. And also, all 4 meetings, it's been dominant wins by the home team. Important game for both sides. Dragons sit in 8th spot on 14 points. Dolphins sit in 10th spot on 12 points. Dragons come into this matchup after beating the Knights 20-6 on Friday last week. So they have a 7-day turnaround. The Dolphins come into this game off the bye. Prior to the bye, they beat the Bulldogs 44 points to 8, which definitely their by far best performance of the season. And off that performance, I went back through. Dolphins have only been favourite on 2 occasions so far this season. So this will be the 3rd time they go into a match as favourite. If they bring the same intensity, the same type of play they brought in that game against the Bulldogs, who were also a little bit undermanned as well, both sides are missing 1 to 2 players, the Dolphins will beat the Dragons here. I think this is a really important game for them to win at home. Statistically, this season, they're the better attacking side, better defensive side, and based off of recent form, how these sides are playing right now, those records hold true as well. However, there isn't a great deal between the two sides. Dolphins just have that bit of inconsistency, but over their last 8 games, they've won 5 of them, just losing against the Warriors, Roosters, and Raiders. all three of those teams playing better football than the Dragons. Also, in terms of the Dolphins, their last 5 wins, or all 5 wins this season, they've also covered the spread. However, all those wins have been as an underdog. So if they are to cover this game as well and win, then it's going to be the first time they cover as a favorite. But definitely the stronger side here at home. Like with the Dragons, their last 2 wins against the Knights and Broncos, hard to get too excited about that considering the form of both of those sides. They also have a loss in recent history against the Tigers where they conceded 34 points. Leaning to the Dolphins to get over the line. Don't think we're going to see a big blowout result though, but it is possible with the Dolphins. You just don't know whether they're really going to want to put the foot down or not. With the total at 47.5, the past 3 between these two sides have gone under. Last time they met, the total was 52.5. The Dragons, 2 of their past 3 games have gone under the total. Same story goes with the Dolphins there. In terms of total points, both these sides are averaging around 44 points a game. So I'd have a slight lean towards the under, but it's probably not a total that I'd be too keen on getting involved in. I think it's probably right now about 2 points higher than I would have it. So I think the value lies with the under, but there is a risk there in taking it with the Dolphins. If you could get the Dragons team total around the 22 mark and play the under on that side, that would probably be the way I'd look to play it. The Dolphins have kept the opponent to 16 or less in each of their last 3 games, and this season the Dragons have only scored over 22 points on 4 occasions across the entire season. So if you can get that number, I think it's probably more so going to be sitting around the 20.5, 21.5, but at 22.5 or even slightly higher, then I'd definitely go the under as a total play in that game. Sharks versus Warriors. The Sharks are favourites here. $1.50. They're now into $1.45, and that minus 5.5 handicaps out to minus 6.5. And the totals moved down from 45.5. It opened at to 44.5. The Warriors have a good record. They've won and covered 3 of the past 4 versus the Sharks, but 3 of the past 4 meetings have been decided by 4 or less. Last season, they met twice. The first time was in round 1 over in New Zealand. The Sharks won 16-12 in the first game of the season. And then in round 26, the Warriors came from a long way down at halftime to win 30-28. The Warriors bounced back last week, beating the Rabbitohs 36-30. That was their highest score of the season, or equal highest, and also the most points they have conceded after losing to the Raiders the week prior. They're on back-to-back road trips here, so it's not ideal setup here for the Warriors, and the Sharks come into this off the bye. Right now, the Raiders sit in 3rd position on the ladder with 9 wins from 12 games. The Sharks a couple of spots behind with 7 wins from 12 games. The Sharks were blown off the park by the Roosters prior to their bye. They last responded from a loss against the Tigers when they beat the Eels the following week. Not like the greatest. They're definitely going to have to play a lot better than that to beat the Warriors this week. At the current odds, I lean slightly towards the Warriors as an underdog here. They've shown they can handle playing on the road this season, which has been an area in previous years has been a bit of a problem for them. But right now, their games away from home, they're beating the Rabbitohs, they're beating the Dolphins, they're beating the Dragons, they beat the Cowboys. They lost to the Storm, they beat the Tigers, and then over in America, lost to the Raiders. But overall on the season, playing really well in their away games as well as their home games as well. We've historically seen close matchups between these two sides, and don't think there's a huge amount of value in up to the plus 5.5, but I think Sharks rarely win games by big margins, and the Warriors on the back of their defense, which currently ranks 4th in the league against the Sharks' 6th ranked defense, can definitely keep this close. I think this is a good try-bet game, either side, 1-12. Sharks at home, Sione Katoa comes back into the side, but they lose Ronaldo Militalo. Warriors lose Mitch Barnett to the ACL injury. Rocco Berry's also out for the Warriors. The key factor for this game, and whilst I think the Warriors keep it close, if I had to tip, I'd be tipping Sharks to win at home. Also due to the fact with no Mitch Barnett for the Warriors, the Sharks forward pack get a significant advantage and can control the field position here, which gives your Braden Trindle and Nico Hines the opportunity to work in behind. Warriors have built a lot of their success this season on winning the meters battle, having good field position, and building pressure and scoring points off the back of that. I think the Sharks can do this. Adam Fanua-Blake playing up against his old side. I think the Sharks will get the go forward through the middle, and that'll give those players the attacking opportunities to score. If Ronaldo Mulitalo was in the side on the opposite wing and you had Katoa in there as well, then I'd be more confident in the Sharks. But I think that just limits their scoring a little bit. But Sharks probably win the game, but I think it's only going to be a small margin. Potentially Sharks 1-12 at the slightly better value is an option as well. The total 45.5, that's now down to 44.5. My fair total for this game is 43.5. So even though 4 of the past 5 have gone over the total, the Warriors this season, 3 of their last 4 games have gone under the total. And for the Sharks, their last 2 games have gone over the total, but overall on the season, majority of their games have gone under the number. As it currently stands, Sharks rank 5th in game total points at 51.3, and the Warriors rank 15th at 37.3. That's off the past 4 weeks. I think that kind of levels out. Warriors generally force teams to play low-scoring games. Sharks can do a similar thing as well. But we saw last week the Warriors don't need to do that either. So I don't really have a strong lean either way on the total. I think the number is pretty accurate in that situation. Like, we get to choose if we want to bet or not. So I'll make a decision on that closer to game time when I post my bets in the best bets. Really interesting game on Saturday night. Broncos at home against the Gold Coast Titans. Broncos $1.33 into $1.31. The handicap opened 9.5 up to 10.5. And the total has stayed at 51.5 for this game. Really important matchup here for the Broncos. They currently sit in 11th position. They're only 1 win outside the top 8. But the reason why I say this is such an important game is after this they have the bye, but that'll be followed by the Sharks, Warriors, and Bulldogs across the next 3 weeks. They also have 2 games against the Storm later on in the season. So there's a lot of games where Broncos are going to be big underdogs, going to struggle to get wins in those games, and they need to win the games against lesser opponents and win the games that they should, which they haven't been doing this season. If you watched the review video from last week, you would have seen, and I did a bit of a mid-season report at the end of that video and went through how the Broncos as a favorite this year have an awful record and are favorite in majority of games but aren't winning them. And it is interesting, the one time they were an underdog, which has been the only time they have been this season, was against the Bulldogs in round 8, and they won that game. But that's off a tangent. Back to this game. Broncos, big favorites here. It's Adam Reynolds' 300th game. Reece Walsh comes back into the side. This is, over the last couple of weeks, the media's really caught on to the Broncos and realized that they're playing poorly, and the criticism started to come. Can they get up for Reynolds' 300th game at home against a Queensland side? This season, they played the Dolphins and Cowboys, their other 2 Queensland rivals, and they won those 2 games against those 2 teams. So they are a team that get up 4 games against their Queensland opponents. Can they do that again here? Titans have won the last 3 against them, and Titans have also covered all those 3. Last time was round 22 last season. The Titans won 46-18. Round 12 last year, the Titans won 36-34. That was at Suncorp. And then back to 2023, round 17, the Titans also won at Suncorp 18-12. So Gold Coast have not only won the last 3, they've also won the last 2 at Suncorp Stadium against the Broncos as big underdogs, which they are again in this game. Interestingly, 7 of the past 9 head-to-head have been decided by 1 to 12 points. The thing with this game is how you approach betting on it. Now, in terms of who wins the game, it's probably going to be the Broncos. Like, they surely have to get over the line at home here. At these kind of odds, in this kind of matchup, both teams are playing badly. It's not like the Titans are coming into this in form. They have lost 7 of the last 8 games with the only win, a 4-point win over the Knights. So on form, Titans aren't playing well enough to win this game. They hung around against the Storm last week, but have trailed at halftime in each of the last 4 games, and Broncos can get the jump on them early and maintain that. I think Brisbane should get the job done, and this potentially could be a game of 2 halves. When we look at how these teams are playing, particularly in recent times, Broncos are the worst second half side. They haven't won a second half in their last 7 games. Over the past 4, they're averaging a minus 14.5 margin in the second half. Titans a little bit better at minus 2 in their second half margin. But Broncos averaging just 3.5 points in second halves across their past 4 and are conceding 18 points in second halves on average. And if we go back to the first half, Broncos are the better first half side. They're averaging a -1.5 first half margin, where the Titans are a -9 first half margin across the past 4 weeks. What that means is, off current form, Broncos should win the first half. Titans probably come back a bit in the second half and close the gap. I'd like the Titans with a bigger handicap, as I do think there's no way you could take the Broncos at $1.30 to win this game, even though they should win, and all those other reasons why they should win the game. But taking $1.30 for a side that's averaging 13.5 points across their past 4 games and has only scored over 14 once, for me, is really, really difficult to do. And not only that, they're conceding 29.5 points per game across their past 4. They've conceded over 30 in 3 of those 4 games and have been playing all sides outside the top 8. So not only their last month has been terrible, they versed the Seagulls, who at that stage were 9th on the ladder, the Dragons, who are 13th, the Rabbitohs, who are 13th, and the Panthers, who were 17th when they faced the Broncos. With all that being said, I think the Broncos probably win the game. There's no value, and you can look at the Titans with the plus as the potential bet in this game. 9 of the past 12 head-to-head have gone over. The total pretty high at 51.5. Titans games averaging 52 points across the past month. Broncos games averaging 43. I make a fair total based on the stats for this game at 48.5. So I think, again, this total is a little bit high, but is likely higher due to the fact that these matchups generally go over the total. Broncos, 5 of their last 7 games have gone under the total. Titans, 3 of their past 5 games have gone over the total. I think we'll go pretty close to this number. I think we'll see a score likely in the high 40s. So potentially an alternate line going under is the play here. We can dive into that later in the week in the analysis game previews of this in the best bets. For this game, I think we'll see a score that is pretty close to this 50 mark. If it does go under, I don't think it's going to go under by a great deal. There's fine conditions expected in Brisbane. Neither of these sides are great defensively overall this season. Both in the bottom half of the competition, the Titans are leaking the most points of any team, and that makes it difficult to take unders. So I think we'll go pretty close to this number. I'll break that down deeper later in the week in the follow-up previews in the best bets section. Raiders versus Rabbitohs. Raiders $1.38 they opened at, and they've now drifted out to $1.44. So that -8.5 is now down to -7.5. So a bit of money for the Rabbitohs. And the total opened at 48.5 is now down to 47.5. The Raiders sit in second position on the ladder, but have the most wins on the season. Rabbitohs just outside the top 8. They've won 50% of their games so far this year. Raiders come into this game beating the Roosters on Sunday night last week. They have a 7-day turnaround, same as the Rabbitohs into this game. That was the 3rd straight win for the Raiders. They only lost 1 game since round number 4, which they lost to the Cowboys, which those losses to the Seagulls and Cowboys back in rounds 3 and 4 seem somewhat hard to believe right now, but they're absolutely flying. They've also covered the spread in every single win so far this season. The Rabbitohs are going well. Like, they're holding their spot just on that fringe of the top 8. Lost last week against the Warriors, but didn't lose any admirers in that loss. They still played pretty well. That was their first game to go over the total this season. Prior to that, all 11 of their games had gone under. So potentially the bye struck some scoring for them. Cody Walker comes back in for the Rabbitohs, so does Jack Whiten. And then for the Raiders, they get Jamal Fogarty back, who missed the game last week. Couple of big ins for both sides, which should push towards scoring. The Raiders have won 5 of the past 6 versus the Rabbitohs. They've also covered the past 3, and the Raiders have won 3 of the past 4 at home versus South Sydney. They just met once last season in round 21 in Canberra, and the Raiders won 32-12 as 3.5-point favourites. The games prior, Rabbitohs won 33-26 and 32-12 in 2023 and 2022. Last time the Rabbitohs beat the Raiders was in 2021, and at this venue, 34-20. We have generally seen fairly high scoring matchups between these two sides, and it's going to be interesting here. I think the Raiders win this game at home. I'd be surprised if they were to drop it. Raiders are the number 2 attacking side. Rabbitohs currently ranked 16th, but keep in mind they did score 30 points last week, which was a season high, but also conceded a season high 36 points as well. For this matchup, probably be going with the Raiders to win. Just think they have a few too many points in them here for the Rabbitohs. In terms of recent form, the first half, there's a pretty big discrepancy between these two sides. The Raiders are the number 5 first half side. The Rabbitohs rank 14th. So I think the Raiders can get the jump on them here early and build a margin at halftime. I don't think they'll run away with this game, as they have tended to leak a few points in the second half, and that's where the Rabbitohs are scoring them. Over the past month, the Rabbitohs are only averaging 6 points in first halves, but 13.5 in second halves. Raiders are averaging about 12.5 to 13 in both halves. With Jamal Fogarty back in the side, the Raiders should get over the line at home. It's not critical this game for the Rabbitohs, but they do have a tricky little run coming up. They got the Raiders, Bulldogs, and Storm across the next 3. So this could make or break their season this patch. They do need to win at least one of these 3 games just to avoid putting too much pressure on them over the final 2 months of the season. The total at 48.5. 3 of the past 4 have gone over. I mentioned the Rabbitohs just had their first game go over the total this season last week against the Warriors. Raiders, 3 of their past 4 games have gone over the total. The past month, the Raiders are averaging 48 points per game. The Rabbitohs are averaging 42.5. I think if this game is to go under, it's going to go very close. If you asked me last week, I probably would have been more confident in the under, but can definitely. The key with this game is the Raiders can score really quickly, and they have scored 30 plus in each of the past 3 against the Rabbitohs. If they get 32, 34, 36 points in this game, then it's going to go over the total. So if you're backing the unders, I'd be a little bit worried. Whilst the number is the value in terms of a number of 48.5 is favoring taking an under, I think it's high for a reason in this game because the way the Raiders are able to generate points. Tigers versus Panthers. The Panthers off their 4th win of the season, $1.33 favorites, minus 9.5. And for this game, the odds have stayed at exactly that, and the total hasn't moved either at 47.5. So no movement on either side. The Panthers have won 3 of the past 4 versus Tigers, but the Tigers have covered 4 of the past 5. Panthers, with that win last week, moved up to 14th, and the Tigers sit in 13th. So they're right next to each other on the ladder. Tigers sitting 1 position above. Good win last week by the Panthers, beating the Eels 18 points to 10. They have another winnable game here against the Tigers, and I think it's important they get over the line here and win this game. Following their bye after this, they have the Warriors and Bulldogs as their next 2 opponents. So this is really important to keep some momentum and pushing up the ladder. They have a good record against the Tigers. Last time they met, round 7 last year, the Panthers won 22-6. I think they'll get over the line and win this game. Tigers are having to travel back from playing in Townsville last week, where they produced a good fight back in the second half and brought the margin back to 4 points against the Cowboys. And if you watch the review, you'll know that Tigers outscored the Cowboys 28-6 whilst both teams had 13 players on the field. The issue was the Tigers had 2 sin bins in that game, and the Cowboys ran in 5 tries during those 2 sin bin periods, and that was ultimately the difference. They've lost 3 in a row. They've trailed at halftime in each of their last 3. With the importance of this game for Penrith, it's hard for me to see them losing this game. So expect they get over the line. The total at 47.5. You have a few strong trends favoring the under here. Firstly, the past 10 games between the Tigers and Panthers have all gone under the total, and the last 3 totals have all been around the 39.5 to 42.5 mark. You got 5 extra points at least to play with here at the 47.5. The Panthers, 7 of their last 9 games have gone under the total, including their last 2. But then for the Tigers, 3 of their last 4 have gone over the total. The only exception, the game in the rain against the Rabbitohs, where they lost 22-12. And then also for the Tigers, their last month, their games are averaging 55 points. So you kind of have to decide which way you're going to go here. Panthers defense over the last month ranks 5th, conceding just 18.3, where the Tigers conceding 36.5. So in terms of a total, I'd be leaning towards the Tigers taking the under here. They've shown they can run in points quickly, but I wouldn't be getting too caught up with that, as last week they played the Cowboys. They scored 28 points, but the Cowboys ranked 14th defensively. Prior to that, against the Rabbitohs, they only scored 12. They were scoreless against the Storm. And against the Dragons, they scored 34, but That Dragons rate 12th defensively. Tigers also haven't scored over 16 points in any of the last 4 games against the Panthers. If Panthers are turning their season around, I think they keep the Tigers to a low score, and that's enough to get them over the line here. A lot of those Tigers games where that 55-point game total average has been due to the opponent running up scores. They've conceded 32, 22, 64, and 28 in their past 4 games. Also conceded 38 against the Eels a couple of weeks prior to that. And then on Monday, the final game of the round, the Bulldogs, the Eels. Bulldogs, $1.40 favourites, minus 8.5, and the total is 44.5. No movement at all in this game. Bulldogs off the bye, currently sit first on the ladder, and the Eels all the way down in 16th after losing to the Panthers last week. Now, firstly, with Parramatta, they're definitely not playing as bad as a 16th place team. They're playing better than the Titans. They're playing better than the Knights, who are the other sides in that bottom 3 down there with them. They've won 4 of the past 6 versus the Bulldogs and covered 5 of the past 6. These sides met in round 3 this season, and the Bulldogs won that game 16 points to 8. And the Bulldogs led at halftime in that game as well. Expect the Bulldogs to be winning this game, but the Eels are playing a lot better now than they were back in that matchup earlier on in the season. The Bulldogs were without Matt Burton in that game, which got injured the week prior. The thing that's looking at this game of how I'm approaching betting on it is how many points these teams can score. So the Bulldogs last week, or the week prior to their bye against the Dolphins, only scored 8 points. That was the first time they've been kept under 16 points this season, and prior to that had scored 24 or more in the 3 games prior. The thing with the Bulldogs is they went on this run between rounds 3, where they beat the Eels, through to round 7, where they only conceded 14 points across 4 games. Their past 5 games, they have conceded a total of 144 points, an average of 28.8. This gives the Eels some opportunity. The Bulldogs' defense isn't what it was earlier on in the season. They're leaking points. If the Eels can take advantage of that, they can give themselves a shot at winning this game, or at the very least, keeping it close. The concern with that is the Bulldogs off the bye. They've had the opportunity to reset. This matchup has a history of being low scoring. 17 of the past 20 head-to-head have gone under. But the Bulldogs, 4 of their past 5 have gone over. The Eels, though, their past 5 have gone under. So majority of the trend favouring the under. I think the Bulldogs will tighten up their defence off the bye. There's potentially a bit of fatigue. They might want to make a bit of a statement after conceding 44 against the Dolphins. But no matter what, I think the Eels can keep this game somewhat close. I don't think they're going to win. I think Bulldogs win the game. And in terms of the total at 44.5, I'm probably going to stay away from it. I think it's right where it should be, considering the history between the two teams of going under and the fact that the Bulldogs are leaking points and the Eels are already the 13th worst defense in the league. However, and this is something to throw in there, the past 4 games, the Parramatta Eels are the number 1 defensive side in terms of points conceded, just 13.5. That's 3.3 better than the next best side. They're the number 2 first half defense, number 5 second half defense. They're giving up the least tries. They're giving up the second most meters per point as well. So there's a lot of positive signs in there for Eels fans that they can give themselves a good chance of winning this game. I think just the Bulldogs bring their best, they'll be too strong, but they haven't been showing us that as much over the past month or so. So I give the Eels a small chance of keeping this game close, particularly on the Monday afternoon. And they do have that good record against the Bulldogs. However, Bulldogs have won the past 2 by 8 and by 4 points. So that's how I'm currently looking at betting the NRL this week. Early on, still a few days to go before the round gets underway. And obviously, it's an extended round this week, starting on Thursday night all the way through to Sunday. I'll be posting everything I'm betting, the exact plays in the NRL Best Bets membership with the bet finders, which you can view through the link in the description. We're over 50% now this season. We started the season really well in the first couple of weeks. Then there was a kind of break-even period, a few down weeks, and then we've turned around the past couple of weeks and now back ahead on our win percentage on the year. You can get all those plays in the best bets, and you can start using the stats to make smart betting decisions and make winning bets on the NRL. See you guys in the try scorer video, which is coming up soon.